World War II is remembered for epic battles, strategies, and the weapons that changed the course of history. But it's also a war surrounded by myths, legends that have persisted for decades, stories of Nazi superweapons, secret experiments, and impossible technologies. Some call them conspiracies, others call them fact. Today, we separate the myth from reality. One of the most persistent legends is the so-called Philadelphia experiment, according to urban lore. In 1943, the US Navy allegedly made a warship invisible, even teleporting it across space and time. Witnesses spoke of sailors fused with metal, sudden disappearances, and secret government cover-ups. But here's the truth. The Philadelphia experiment story originated decades after World War II, primarily through a series of letters from a man named Carl Allen, also known as Carlos Allende. Naval historians and the Office of Naval Research have never found evidence that such an experiment took place. Ships were never made invisible. No teleportation occurred. What survived was a legend fueled by fear, imagination, and Cold War paranoia, while the Philadelphia experiment is pure legend. Nazi Germany did develop revolutionary weapons that inspired later myths, from the V2 rockets to jet aircraft. Hitler's scientists pushed the boundaries of technology, but claims of death rays, flying saucers, or teleportation devices, those remain myths often exaggerated by post-war stories and Cold War conspiracy theories. Take Die Glock, the Nazi bell. Some claim it was an anti-gravity device or a time machine, but surviving documents indicate it was likely a scientific experiment possibly related to chemical or nuclear research. No credible evidence supports claims of anti-gravity or teleportation technology. So why do these stories persist? Myths thrive on three things: mystery, secrecy, and human imagination. World War II was a period of immense technological progress, combined with post-war secrecy, missing documents, and the rise of sensationalist magazines. It was the perfect breeding ground for conspiracy theories. Carl Allen's letters, sensational magazine articles, and Hollywood depictions blurred the line between reality and imagination. People wanted to believe in secret powers, hidden technology, and impossible Nazi plans because it made the war even more dramatic in hindsight. But the truth is just as fascinating. The Nazis did create advanced aircraft, rockets, and even early guided missiles. Wernher von Braun's V2 rocket program, for example, became the foundation for the Apollo space program decades later. There were no miracle weapons capable of bending reality, but the real weapons, rockets, jet fighters, and advanced artillery, were terrifyingly effective. Let's address the most sensational claims: death rays and teleportation. Nazi scientists experimented with directed energy concepts like early lasers, but these never became functional weapons during World War II. Similarly, teleportation? Impossible. There is no credible scientific record supporting these claims. Myths often emerge when partial truths meet imagination. Real technological progress was misinterpreted, exaggerated, and sensationalized. Myths like the Philadelphia experiment or Nazi UFOs are more than stories. They reflect our fascination with the unknown, our fear of secret powers, and our desire for dramatic narratives in history. Understanding the truth behind these legends reminds us history itself is often stranger and sometimes more incredible than fiction. The Philadelphia experiment? Fiction. Nazi anti-gravity weapons? Likely exaggerated, but the real innovations, the human stories, and the extraordinary engineering achievements of World War II, those are facts. Join us in the next episode, where we uncover the truth behind one of history's most persistent mysteries. Did Hitler really escape to Argentina? Subscribe to WWII Echoes for more myth-busting World War II documentaries. Comment which legend you thought was true before watching. Share this video so history is separated from fantasy. Adolf Hitler, one of history's most infamous figures, officially. He died by suicide in his Berlin bunker on April 30, 1945. Yet, over decades, stories emerged claiming he escaped Germany, fleeing to Argentina, Brazil, or even Antarctica. Today, we examine the evidence and the myths behind Hitler's alleged escape. Almost immediately after the war, rumors circulated. Some claimed Hitler had been secretly airlifted to South America. These theories were fueled by Soviet misinformation, Cold War propaganda, incomplete eyewitness reports from Berlin, One persistent claim was that Hitler lived out his days in Argentina, protected by former Nazis who had fled Europe. Books, documentaries, and sensational articles over decades kept the legend alive. Proponents of the theory point to several pieces of evidence. Eyewitness sightings in South America in the late 1940s and 1950s US, and CIA documents declassified decades later, noting alleged intelligence reports of Hitler in Argentina, submarines, and secret Nazi escape networks like Odessa that helped high-ranking Nazis flee Europe. But while intriguing, none of this is conclusive. The Soviet Union was the first to claim Hitler had escaped. Stalin allegedly wanted the world to believe Hitler was alive for propaganda purposes to justify Soviet actions in Berlin and maintain fear in post-war Germany. Years later, forensic examinations confirmed that the body found in the bunker matched dental records of Hitler. The Soviets themselves confirmed Hitler's death in 1968 after extensive testing of the remains. Dental records from Hitler's dentist and assistant provided the most reliable proof. Multiple witnesses in the bunker, including Hitler's staff and military officers, consistently reported his death. Investigators exhumed fragments of Hitler's jawbone and compared them to the dentist's records, conclusively verifying his death. So why do escape stories endure? Psychological fascination. People struggle to accept that such a notorious figure could vanish quietly, incomplete post-war information. Chaos in Europe created gaps in reports, leaving room for speculation. Popular media, movies, novels, and TV shows have dramatized the Hitler escape narrative. In short, these stories thrive on mystery and imagination, not facts. Experts agree. Hitler died in the bunker. Declassified CIA documents mentioning alleged sightings were based on unverified reports, often second or third-hand accounts. Investigations into Nazi escape networks reveal that Hitler himself had no escape plan. The Nazi leadership was crumbling, and Hitler refused to leave Berlin. Legends about Hitler in Argentina, submarines, or secret hideouts are fascinating, but ultimately fiction. Reality is often simpler, yet no less chilling. Hitler died in his bunker as the Third Reich collapsed. The myths serve as a reminder of how history can be twisted when facts are scarce, and how conspiracy theories capture the imagination. Hitler did not vanish into the jungle. He did not escape justice. But the stories of escape reveal more about human psychology than about history. How we fear evil, how we mythologize it, and how legends grow where facts are absent. Subscribe to WWII Echoes to uncover the truth behind the world's most enduring World War II mysteries. Comment below. Which Hitler escape myth did you think was true? Share this video to separate fact from fiction. Somewhere in the mountains of Europe, deep beneath lakes or buried in forgotten tunnels, legends whisper of lost Nazi gold. Tales of vast treasure trains vanishing as the Third Reich collapsed. Gold melted from victims' jewelry, paintings stolen from across Europe. But how much of this is truth, and how much is myth? The Nazis plundered Europe on an unimaginable scale. From 1939 onward, art, gold, and valuables from conquered nations and from millions of victims were systematically looted. Gold from national banks, private collections, even from the teeth of concentration camp prisoners, was melted down and stored in the Reichsbank and other secret locations. By 1945, the Allies estimated that the Nazis had stolen billions of dollars worth of treasure, and as Germany's defeat loomed, this treasure began to disappear. One of the most famous stories is that of the Wartime gold train in Poland. According to legend, as Soviet forces closed in, a train loaded with gold, art, and secret documents was hidden in a sealed tunnel in the Ural Mountains. The story resurfaced in 2015, when explorers claimed to have found the buried train using ground-penetrating radar. For weeks, the world held its breath. Could this be the lost Nazi treasure train? But when official excavations began, no train was ever found. Experts now believe the radar images were geological anomalies. Still, the legend persists, part truth, part wishful thinking. Another enduring myth is that Heinrich Himmler ordered secret caches of treasure to be buried in Bavaria and Austria, guarded by SS troops sworn to secrecy. Some post-war discoveries did reveal hidden vaults filled with art and gold, such as the Merkers mine in the INGI. In April 1945, US forces found more than 100 tons of gold, silver, and currency in the Merkers salt mine, but most of that treasure was catalogued and returned. The myth of vast, still missing Nazi gold likely stems from the idea that more caches remain undiscovered. Lake Toplitz in Austria has fascinated treasure hunters for decades. During the war, the Nazis used it as a secret testing site for naval weapons and for dumping counterfeit British currency as part of Operation Bernhard, the largest counterfeiting operation in history. Divers later recovered crates of fake money, sparking rumors that deeper, beyond the mud, rest bars of gold and SS archives. Yet every major expedition since has failed to find gold. Scientists believe any heavier material would be buried under decades of silt, making recovery nearly impossible. Operation Bernhard was no myth. In 1942, SS officers forced Jewish prisoners from Sachsenhausen concentration camp to produce millions of fake British pounds, with the goal of collapsing the British economy. Many of those forged notes were later dumped into lakes to hide the evidence as Germany fell. The operation failed, but its legacy fed later treasure myths. After all, what if some of those lakes held not just counterfeit money but real gold? Historians agree. Some Nazi treasures were hidden and later recovered, but the grand, cinematic stories of endless gold trains and secret alpine vaults, they remain largely unproven. Much of the lost gold was accounted for in Allied records or recovered during the post-war investigations of the monuments, fine arts, and archives program the monuments men. The rest, historians suspect, was stolen privately by Nazi officials or melted down in the chaos of war's end. The myth of the last Nazi gold captivates us because it fuses greed, power, and mystery. Treasure hunters, filmmakers, and conspiracy theorists still search forests, lakes, and tunnels not just for wealth, but for a tangible connection to history's darkest chapter. The legend of lost Nazi gold is not just about money. It's about the enduring human hunger for discovery and for the hope that somewhere beneath the earth lies a story still untold. From the tunnels of Poland to the depths of Austrian lakes, the truth may forever lie buried. The last Nazi gold may never be found because perhaps it was never truly lost. Subscribe to WWII to Echoes to uncover the truth behind the myths. Comment below. Would you risk your life searching for the last Nazi gold? Share this documentary to keep history's mysteries alive and the facts clearer than ever. The Third Reich wasn't just built on weapons and ideology. Some believed it was built on mysticism. Tales of Nazi occult rituals, secret societies, and the search for ancient relics have fueled decades of speculation, from lost grails to hidden Himalayan temples. But how much of it was real, and how much was myth? Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, was not just a bureaucrat of terror. He was an ideologue obsessed with ancestry and ancient power. Under his leadership, the SS became a kind of modern pagan order. Its symbols, the twin lightning bolts, the black sun, were drawn from old runes, Norse legends, and Germanic myths. Himmler founded the Ahnenerbe, the Ancestral Heritage Society, in 1935, a pseudo-scientific institute meant to prove the superiority of the Aryan race. Its expeditions searched for evidence linking ancient civilizations from Tibet to the Vikings to Germany's imagined mystical past. To some, these were archaeological missions. To others, they were quests for the supernatural. Legends claim that Himmler's Ahnenerbe sought the Holy Grail, believing it was a symbol of Aryan purity and divine power. The SS even converted Wolfsburg Castle into their ceremonial headquarters, a place some describe as a Black Camelot. Here, Himmler envisioned a new knightly order of SS elites, performing rituals tied to ancient pagan beliefs. Yet, historians note that while Himmler's fascination with myth was real, the Grail quest stories were greatly exaggerated. After the war, no credible evidence ever proved the Nazis sought or possessed any mythical relic. In 1938, the Ahnenerbe sent an expedition to Tibet. Officially, the mission aimed to study local culture and geography, but conspiracy theories later claimed it was a hunt for Aryan origins or ancient powers buried in the Himalayas. The expedition collected artifacts, measured skulls, and even brought back seeds and plants for study. But there was no proof of occult rituals, only twisted anthropology built to serve Nazi ideology. The myth, however, endured, fed by post-war novels and films suggesting the Nazis sought Shambhala, the mythical kingdom of enlightenment. Another enduring legend, that Hitler possessed the Spear of Destiny, the weapon said to have pierced Christ's side. According to myth, whoever held the spear would rule the world, and losing it meant death. When Allied forces took Vienna in 1945, They indeed found an ancient spear in the Hofburg Museum, but historians confirmed it was a ceremonial relic, not the biblical weapon. Yet, the story of Hitler's magic spear became part of popular culture, blending fact, superstition, and our need to believe that evil must have come from something otherworldly. Beneath the mysticism lay something more insidious: pseudoscience. The Nazis warped archaeology, biology, and anthropology to justify genocide not through magic, but through manipulation of truth. What seems supernatural in hindsight was, in reality, a brutal political weapon, turning myth into justification for mass murder. After the war, Allied soldiers and journalists uncovered occult symbols in Nazi ruins. These discoveries, mixed with Cold War intrigue, sparked decades of sensational claims: Nazi UFOs, secret Antarctic bases, hidden occult orders still at work. Most were exaggerations or fabrications, but they reflected a deeper human instinct to explain evil with something cosmic, rather than accept that it was human. The truth is both simpler and far more disturbing. The Nazis didn't need dark magic, they had ideology, fear, and science twisted to inhuman ends. Their occult was not the supernatural, it was the cult of belief itself. In their hands, myth became weapon, and that, more than any legend, is the most terrifying truth of all. The legends of Nazi occultism still haunt popular culture, from novels to Hollywood blockbusters, but behind the myth lies a far darker reality. A regime that built its own religion of hate and nearly destroyed the world in its name. If you believe history's truth is stranger than its myths, subscribe to WWII Echoes and join us as we uncover the next mystery of the war. Deep in the dying days of the Third Reich, Nazi scientists worked in secret facilities, racing to create wonder weapons that might hand defeat into victory: rockets, jets, secret bombs, and, if the stories are true, something even stranger: a mysterious device called Glock, the bell. Some say it was a prototype for a new energy source. Others believe it was a time machine or an anti-gravity weapon. But what was the Nazi bell? Fact, fiction, or both? As Germany crumbled in 1944, Adolf Hitler became increasingly obsessed with the promise of miracle weapons. The Wunderwaffe, the Third Reich, poured its last hopes into scientific innovation: jet fighters, guided missiles, and long-range rockets. Some of these were real and terrifyingly advanced, like the V-1 flying bomb and the V-2 rocket, the first ballistic missile in history. These weapons brought horror to London and Antwerp, but they came too late to save a collapsing empire. And as the war neared its end, rumors began, whispers of other experiments, far stranger than rockets or jets. The story of the Nazi bell surfaced decades after the war, first described by Polish journalist Igor Witkowski in the 1990s. He claimed to have seen classified documents describing a secret SS project codenamed Kronos. The bell, he said, was a large, metallic, bell-shaped device that emitted a dangerous radiation when activated, killing plants, animals, and even researchers. It allegedly produced a glowing, violet blue light and could manipulate gravity, or even time itself. The experiment supposedly took place near Ludwikowice, Poland, within the massive Der Ries complex, an underground network of bunkers, factories, and tunnels built by forced laborers in the Ural Mountains. No physical trace of Die Glock has ever been found, and no blueprints, no wreckage, no photos, only survivor testimony and scattered mentions in post-war SS interrogation reports. Some researchers believe the bell was not an anti-gravity machine, but a code name possibly for early nuclear research or a centrifugal experiment using mercury-based plasma. If true, the mysterious radiation effects could have been from heavy metals or radioactive isotopes, not otherworldly energy. The Nazis did lead the world in some military technologies: jet-powered aircraft like the Messerschmitt, Me-262, and rockets like the V-2 paved the way for the Cold War space race. But the myth of Nazi superweapons was inflated after the war, often by Allied propaganda and later by conspiracy writers. In truth, the Wunderwaffe program was disorganized, underfunded, and riddled with desperation. Germany's greatest scientific minds were scattered or dead. When the Cold War began, Die Glock transformed from obscure rumor into global legend. Rise of UFO hysteria and secret US military projects like Operation Paperclip, which brought Nazi scientists to America, blurred the lines between fact and fiction. Some claimed the bell was transported to South America, others said it fell into US hands. books, TV shows, and documentaries turned it into a Nazi version of the Roswell incident. The truth, however, was simpler. The bell, if it existed, likely represented the extreme of Nazi desperation, not alien technology. After the war, Allied intelligence teams swept through Germany, seizing research, scientists, and prototypes. Among them was Wernher von Braun, the father of the V2, later key to NASA's Apollo program. The real Wonder Wolf legacy wasn't a time-traveling, but it was the dawn of the space age and nuclear warfare. Nazi science didn't defy physics. It simply pushed it, often with inhuman cost. Most historians now agree Die Glock likely never existed in the form conspiracy theorists imagine. It was a post-war legend, born from fragments of truth, wartime secrecy, advanced science, and human fascination with forbidden power. In reality, the Nazis' quest for wonder weapons showed not genius, but panic, a regime grasping at miracles while drowning in ruin. Why does the legend of the Nazi bell endure? Because it's not just about technology, it's about the human hunger for mystery, for the belief that even in humanity's darkest hour, there were secrets the world wasn't ready to face. But the truth is more haunting than any myth. The real miracle was not what the Nazis built, but what the world built after they fell. The bell never flew, but its shadow still lingers, a symbol of how easily fear can turn science into superstition. Subscribe to WWII Echoes for more cinematic deep dives into the myths, conspiracies, and untold truths of World War II. Comment below. Do you believe Die Glock was real or just another Cold War legend? The Hitler escape theory. Myths of the bunker and the man who never died. In the closing days of April 1945, as Soviet shells shattered the Reich Chancellery above, Adolf Hitler retreated into the depths of his concrete bunker beneath Berlin. Officially, he and Eva Braun took their own lives on April 30, 1945. Their bodies burned by loyal aides before the Soviets arrived. But for decades, the world refused to accept that the tyrant was truly gone. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by missing documentation, conflicting Soviet accounts, and Cold War propaganda. Some said Hitler had escaped in a U-boat to Argentina. Others whispered about Nazi colonies in South America or secret air evacuations in the last hours of Berlin. The idea of Hitler's survival became one of the most enduring myths of the 20th century. The Soviets themselves fed this fire. Stalin, in 1945, told US officials he believed Hitler had fled. Soviet propaganda hinted that the Americans were sheltering him. Newspapers printed supposed sightings, a man resembling Hitler seen in Colombia, another in Brazil decades later. The myth survived because the truth was fragmented, buried under the rubble of Berlin, locked behind Soviet archives, and obscured by disinformation. But what does the evidence really say? In 2009, DNA tests and forensic studies were conducted on a piece of skull long claimed by Russia to belong to Hitler. The results shocked historians. The skull fragment was that of a woman, not a man. Conspiracy theorists rejoiced, claiming this proved Hitler had survived. But deeper research revealed that the jawbone, not the skull fragment, had been the real forensic proof, compared in 1946 by Soviet pathologists to Hitler's dental records and verified by his own dental assistants. The jawbone matches were conclusive, scientifically confirming that Hitler died in the bunker. So why does this myth persist? Because myths give us something reality often doesn't: narrative closure. The idea of Hitler escaping punishment allows us to project evil beyond the war, to imagine it lurking, unpunished, somewhere in the shadows. It's a psychological refusal to believe that such a monstrous figure could die so simply by his own hand, in defeat. Yet, the truth, as always, is far more human and far more final. Hitler died in Berlin, but the ghost of his myth, the one born from lies, propaganda, and the human craving for mystery, continues to live on, haunting documentaries, novels, and internet forums even today. The myth of Hitler's escape isn't really about Hitler. It's about our inability to let history be final, our hunger for stories that refuse to end. If this part fascinated you, don't miss part 7. We dive into one of the strangest wartime myths of all: the alleged Nazi UFOs and secret Antarctic bases, and separate fact from wild fiction. Subscribe and stay with us as we continue uncovering the truth behind World War II's most enduring conspiracies. Among the strangest legends to emerge from the ashes of the Third Reich are tales so bizarre, They sound like science fiction claims that the Nazis built flying saucers, discovered a secret Antarctic base, and even escaped there after the war to continue their sinister experiments. It's a story that's fascinated conspiracy circles for decades. A blend of real wartime research, post-war confusion, and Cold War paranoia. But how did it begin? In the 1930s and 1942, Nazi Germany poured enormous resources into experimental aviation. Engineers like the Horten brothers created sleek, jet-powered flying winged designs that looked astonishingly similar to what people would later describe as UFOs. These real prototypes, the Horten HO-229, for example, were cutting-edge, stealthy, and decades ahead of their time. After the war, Allied pilots and engineers stumbled upon these secret aircraft projects, fueling rumors that the Nazis had been building flying saucers. Then came the Antarctic myth. In 1938-39, Germany indeed launched an expedition to Antarctica, establishing a research area called New Schwabenland. Their stated purpose was whaling and mapping, but conspiracy theorists later claimed it was the beginning of something far darker. An underground fortress beneath the ice, complete with advanced weaponry and secret technologies. By the late 1940s, the story had grown. A U.S. military mission called Operation High Jump, led by Admiral Richard Byrd in 1946-47, was supposedly sent to destroy the Nazi Antarctic base. In truth, High Jump was a large-scale training and research operation, yet Byrd's vague comments about a new enemy capable of flying from pole to pole were twisted into proof that he had encountered Nazi UFOs. Hollywood, Cold War propaganda, and pseudoscience did the rest. Books like The Morning of the Magicians and later internet conspiracies expanded the myth, connecting Nazi UFOs to alien technology, the occult, and even Antarctica's hollow earth theories. But the facts remain firmly grounded. No credible evidence has ever surfaced of any Nazi base under the ice. Declassified German naval records show no post-war U-boat traffic to Antarctica. The flying saucers were simply early jet and disc-shaped experimental aircraft, none of which ever left Germany's collapsing war front. So why do people still believe? Because these stories combine three irresistible ingredients. The awe of Nazi technology, which was genuinely advanced, the mystery of Antarctica, one of the least explored regions on Earth, and the unending human desire to believe that history still hides incredible secrets. When truth feels too ordinary, myth rushes in to fill the silence. The idea of a Nazi UFO isn't history, it's the echo of our obsession with power, mystery, and the forbidden. Next, in Part 8, we confront the last and most haunting myth of all: the hidden Nazi gold, secret vaults, and mysterious disappearances of wartime treasures that still fuel treasure hunts today. Subscribe and join us as we separate fact from fiction, one mystery at a time. Few mysteries from World War II have captured the imagination, quite like the legend of Nazi gold billings in stolen wealth, art, and relics that vanished as the Third Reich collapsed. From sunken trains to secret Alpine bunkers, the hunt for Hitler's hidden treasures has become a story that blurs the line between history and myth. When Nazi forces swept across Europe, they didn't just conquer, they plundered. Gold reserves, priceless artworks, religious artifacts, even jewelry ripped from the hands of victims was seized under orders from the Reich. The stolen wealth was meant to fund the Nazi war machine and, later, to preserve power after defeat. But as Allied troops closed in during 1945, that vast fortune began to disappear. Convoys vanished. Train manifests went blank. Witnesses spoke of last-minute orders to move gold into mountains, mines, and lakes. One of the most famous legends is that of the Nazi gold train, a mysterious armored train said to have departed Breslau, now Wrocław, Poland, in April 1945, laden with gold, art, and documents. According to witnesses, it vanished into the Owl Mountains, where Hitler's secret Reese complex was being built. Despite decades of searches, even ground-penetrating radar scans, in 2015 no train has ever been found. Then there's Lake Toplitz in Austria. Divers there discovered crates of counterfeit British pounds, part of Operation Bernhard, a Nazi scheme to crush the British economy by flooding it with fake currency. Rumors persist that deeper in the lake lie more sinister treasures: gold, documents, perhaps even Nazi fugitives' escape funds. Meanwhile, the Amber Room, an 18th century masterpiece looted from Russia's Catherine Palace, disappeared entirely. Packed into crates and shipped to Nixburg in 1944, it was never seen again. Some say it was destroyed by Allied bombs. Others claim it was spirited away by fleeing SS officers and still lies hidden beneath a Baltic bunker. Each clue leads to another dead end, and each dead end keeps the myth alive. But the truth, as historians remind us, is often less cinematic and more tragic. Much of the Nazi gold was recovered and accounted for in post-war Allied operations, like T-Force and Safe Haven, aimed at seizing assets before they could fund new fascist movements. Yet even those missions acknowledged that millions, perhaps billions, were never found. Why does this story endure? Because it represents the lingering ghosts of the war, not just the physical gold, but the moral debt left behind. Each search for treasure is, in a way, a search for closure. The Nazi gold myth isn't just about lost treasure. It's about a civilization trying to recover what war took, not just wealth, but humanity itself. If you've followed this journey through myths, mysteries, and hidden truths, help us keep uncovering history's forgotten echoes. Subscribe to WWII Echoes, hit the bell, and share this documentary to keep real history, not myth, alive.